to Transcendental Transformation, the place where spirituality and transformation unite. Host Miss Raina imparts truth so that you can break through your limiting beliefs and evolve into a deeper consciousness. As you go about your day, remember, before every breakthrough, there is a breakdown. And now, let's start the show.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's episode of Transcendental Transformation. I'm your host, Miss Raina, and today is Tuesday, November 3rd, 2020. As always, we are coming live from the Sirius Star System studios right here in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and I hope all is well with everybody. So today is the election here in the U.S., and did you vote? Did you not vote? Do you not care? I know, it's one of those things where you've been hearing about it for a whole year, and if you're like me, you just kind of remove yourself from this, because no matter who wins tonight, it doesn't affect my life anyway, so it doesn't. So you just gotta remember that. But yes, just remember there's always more than two choices here in America. There are a lot of choices, but we get tricked a lot of times into thinking that there's just two. So if you're unhappy with those choices, you can vote otherwhere, but you just gotta make that commitment. So anyways, let's get on, because I don't want to talk about that. But yesterday was Gratitude Day, and I saw all sorts of people posting things about gratitude, and I really hope that every day is gratitude for you guys. But if it's not, then start making every day your gratitude. And that doesn't mean, as we've talked about on past shows, that doesn't mean being grateful for the things you have. That means feeling gratitude for who you are, your experiences, and all the things you're going through, even the things that are very challenging and chaotic. You should always be grateful for those, because that is what makes us who we are. So, all right, guys, one last thing before we get on to going. I know we're a minute behind because I had to restart everything. I don't know why. The audio wasn't working on Streamlabs, and so, but it is. But anyways, guys, we have a homeless clothes drive this Saturday, November 2nd, 2020. As always, guys, if you have clothes, socks, blankets, backpacks, whatever, have personal hygiene products, please contact me or Caleb on Facebook, and contact us and let us know where we can maybe meet up to pick up clothes or whatever. And if you don't have clothes and you still want to help out, we would be I'd be grateful for that. Please visit our GoFundMe account, and Caleb will be posting all that stuff on Facebook and all the things. So anyways, guys, as always, we're live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, or Twitch, Periscope, LinkedIn, Dailymotion. We're on all the stuff, and Caleb's going to be on those. If you guys have any questions, hit him up in the chat rooms, or hit him up on the chat on all those social medias and stuff, and he will talk to you. And then if you guys have any questions, he'll relay everything to me, and we will talk about them live. As always, we're on replays on Amazon, Spotify, Pandora, Stitch, iTunes, Library, Podboy, there's just so many of them now. You know the gist. So anyways, guys, let's get into tonight, because I am really excited about tonight. And the reason why I'm excited is because this show, I love psychology, first of all, and this is obviously what I do is all on the psychology basis. And this show, one of the things I find fascinating about life is the reason why people do things. And to me, that's always been a huge motivation of mine. I love to people watch. I love to sit there and stare and watch and just kind of see what people are doing, what they're thinking, how they're going to associate things, and why we really act the way we do. And if we're and to me, that's just fascinating. I love anything cognitive. I really do. And to me, it's just the mind, the way we work, the way we perceive things, the way we interact, and everything just seem to be all what we're about. And that is the human experience of what we call perception, right? So we're going to talk about today the intrinsic and extrinsic motivations to belong. And also, we're going to talk about about attachment theory, because the attachment theory goes hand in hand with this, and it really puts into place what we're really dealing with. Because one of the things that people always ask is, well, why did I do that? Why was it that I ended up making that decision? I have no clue why I decided to do that. I don't know why I acted like that. I don't know why I do the things I do. I don't know why I chase the same relationships, or I'm always the victim and I'm always pitying myself, or whatever it is, why I'm always angry. But tonight, what's great about tonight, and I'm so glad you guys joined us, is because you're going to learn a lot about that tonight, because we have intrinsic and extrinsic motivations for everything. And the reason why we are hanging around the people that we do, well, we're going to discuss that tonight, because we're all longing for belonging, aren't we? We all have this need for love, because we have this apparent feeling inside of us called loneliness. And because we really haven't figured out who we are, where we're going, what we're doing at the moment, and because we're so in the past with our pains, we're always longing for belonging, and we're searching for somebody, especially in love. And that's why these ideas are so big to us. So what is belonging? Well, belonging is referred to as belongingness. It is a human emotional need that is to be affiliated or accepted by other people, whether it be individuals, group members. And this is something that is a very fundamental type of idea that we hold into ourselves. Because if you think about it, ever since childhood, we're always looking to belong. We're always trying to fit in with the cool kids. We're always trying to fit in with the groups and try to be popular either in sports or the clubs we take. And we're always searching for that group. And what's funny is, no matter how much we get out of grade school, no matter how much we get out of high school, aren't we truly still there? And don't we really, truly still searching and chasing our ideas to belong to something? Because we call them, in our adulthood, we call them cliques, right? And I don't know, do they still use that stuff? I don't know. Maybe I'm showing my age, but in my generation, we called them cliques, and cliques were, and still today, I still use that term. And people seem to want to follow each other and group together, and the people that do the same things are always seem to fit the best. And if you're one of those people like me that just really don't care for groups or don't fit in, never have really fit in, have always been the outcast, have always been maybe called names back in grade school and everything like that, and maybe been bullied or anything like that, because you just weren't the person that really fit in and was accepted by these groups. Because one is often centered to gain acceptance. I mean, that's the truth behind what you're doing. Everything that you're doing is to be accepted, is we're looking for that support. And basically, if we're not fed that type of information, and we're going to get into that in attachment theory, but if we're not fed that acceptance, that support system when we're young, especially by our parents and our peers, what ends up happening is we become affected later in life, and we have these attachment theories that we start attaching to these ideas, or we push back the ideas based on our either fear of love, our fear of intimacy, or the acceptance that we want it so bad that we just dive into it and we just smother everybody. And I know that many of us, probably all of us, have, when we get into attachment theory, have had this idea. Because if we're looking to be accepted and supported, well, what is that based on? That's based on likability, right? If we're likable, if we're one of those people that everybody just seems to like, well, then we're loved. And that's why we idolize people. That's why we look at athletes and famous people and rich people and stuff like that, because people idolize those ideas. They think, wow, that's so cool to be so talented and so great and everything, because we're so lacking inside. And we associate these ideas with likability and love. So we think that we have to be talented. We think that we have to be good looking. we think that we have to be these ideas, rich and famous, in order for us to be likable and loved. But if you talk to a lot of people that are famous, they're actually quite empty. They might be shallow inside and value monetary things, or they might not be that way, but they might get the attention from people that really just want what they have and not really like them. And I know you ladies can understand that, especially if you are pretty. And at one time, believe it or not, I was too. And I had a great body. And all these people would come up to me all the time and hit on me and constantly want my attention. But it was never for me. It was for the way I looked or the way I presented myself, because they felt sexually attracted. And I know women and even you men who are very good looking and stuff fall under this. And so we're looking for this likability. We're looking for this love. And we always try to seek it any way we can. And so we'll go to these groups that accept us or don't accept us, or we'll change who we are in order to fit into these groups. But we have to kind of shift our perception there, because if we're giving, we have to ask ourselves, is this group really giving back to me? Are these people giving back to us the same way? Because if I'm really heavily needing to be loved, if I'm really heavily needing to fit into everything, well then everything we do is trying to fit in. And if I'm not receiving the exact what I put into it, then what do? We get angry, right? We get frustrated. Well, I give so much. I'm such a caring person. Nobody gives to me. Well, that's because you're chasing the wrong people. You're chasing the wrong groups. You're chasing people who subconsciously aren't going to give you anything, because you think that the people you're chasing are going to bring you value. And the fact of the matter is you hate being alone. And that's just the truth of it. You hate being alone, and the thought of being alone frightens us. So you're willing to attach yourself to anybody and everybody just to fit in. I don't know how many times we see this in sports. We see this in a lot of things. I know that a lot of teams that I've played for and a lot of people I've been around have been very cliquey. And if you don't act a certain way and talk a certain way and believe in certain things, you're not part of the group. And if you're trying to find a way to fit in, and that's why a lot of people sacrifice their own belief systems, their own morals, their own judgments, their own ideals inside for what other people think, because the thought of them being alone, the thought of them being an outcast is worse than fitting into a group that you don't really belong to. So let's talk about intrinsic motivation. What is intrinsic motivation? Well, intrinsic motivations are behaviors driven by internal rewards. So what does that mean? So that means that we have these behaviors that arise that are naturally satisfying to you. So if we're playing a role, we're playing these presentations, we're playing these ideas, and based on our behavior, what kind of internal reward we're going to have. Where is this idea going to take us? And so these people strive, because say for me, like I really love research. And the reason why I love research, because the internal reward, the intrinsic motivation is that I feel satisfied by knowledge. And so the behavior is driven to me by, well, if I do this, then I'm going to get this internally by myself, because it's an internal reward. And so the behavior arises that I know that every time I go and do research and every time I look up something, I'm feeding my soul, I'm feeding my knowledge, I'm feeding my brain, I'm feeding all these things that internally reward me. It's not giving me anything out externally. It's all internally. And so these type of ideas, and even for people who are spiritual, well, why do you meditate? Well, what's the point of your meditations? The intrinsic motivation is supposed to be because it makes you feel relaxed, it centers you, it focuses you. But we have these ideas, well, if I meditate, I'm going to become psychic, I'm going to become this, I'm going to have these connections, and oh, how cool am I going to look? But the truth of the matter is these intrinsic motivations should be internal rewards, something that's satisfying for you, because it shouldn't have to deal with and we'll get into extrinsic motivations in a little bit, but it shouldn't have to deal with any type of external rewards. And so intrinsic motivations, in my personal opinion, are wonderful because this can lead changes in your behaviors, in your belief systems, and your attitude, especially for people who strive to conform to standard norms and groups. So if I'm sitting there and I'm trying to if I'm trying to get if I have all this motivation from an extrinsic point of view, well, then that's going to lead me towards the point of outside rewards, which we'll get into later. But the intrinsic will teach me, will sit there and say, well, what is it that I want? What is this behavior? Well, if I do this, then what is the internal reward that I'm going to get? Is it going to satisfy something that I'm really looking for? Because, hey, if I'm trying to fit into all these groups that are just closed-minded and cliquey and all these things, and I know, and I'm dating and I'm constantly chasing toxic relationships and all these different things, and I'm constantly having these habits that are repeating, well, then I'm in intrinsic motivation. I need to switch my ideas to intrinsic motivation, because what behaviors am I holding that I'm really looking for? What belief systems in me that I really want to hold true to me so that my attitude changes? Because we have an election going on right now, right? And let's use that election as a thing, as an example. Because if I'm intrinsically looking, well, then an election can't give me any internal satisfaction. It can't satisfy me anyway, because whether one party wins or another, intrinsically, that doesn't do anything for me. That's extrinsic. So when we're sitting there and all of a sudden, yay, my party won, you party lost, and you get all nasty about it and everything, you're searching for external rewards, like something outside is going to give you value. And this is why, in my personal opinion, intrinsic motivation is one of the best motivations, because it doesn't come from an external point of view. It all comes from an internal point of view. And that's the great, because when most people present themselves, or I should say most people present themselves in a particular way to belong to a group specific specifications. And so when they're sitting there, they're making either intrinsic or extrinsic motivations based on what they want from a group. So if you're looking for yourself as far as your groups and your friends around you, ask yourself, take a step back and say, you know what? Are the people around me, am I looking intrinsically from the people around me, or am I looking extrinsically? Because if I'm looking intrinsically, then I'm not really looking for external gratification. I'm not looking for something from somebody else. I'm looking for intrinsically. I have my friends like Caleb, Leanne, and Maritza, and other people, and Chris, and other people. They're intrinsic motivations. They satisfy me because of my need to be who I am, and it's like an add-on. It's like a bonus. It doesn't have this external factors that I need. And so when we're sitting here looking for these ideas, well, then you have to say that, well, my groups are all external right now. And a lot of times we spend a great deal comparing ourselves to somebody else, or comparing ourselves to another idea. And so if we're sitting there and we have this idea that this is going to give us this, then this is the reason why this holds value compared to something internally. If I'm saying, well, this idea externally is going to give me value. These people, these ideas, this behavior that I'm doing is going to give me external value. Well, then I'm going to go chase it. I'm going to go after it. And when I go after it, I'm going to get the reward that I really like. So, all right, guys, we'll be right back after these messages from I Am Evolution.
The human experience is changing, and consciousness is evolving into something higher than any of us could ever imagine. As we transform into more sentient beings, a new world of connected consciousness is taking place. Welcome to I Am Evolution, the movement in human development that transforms the human experience into a deeper consciousness through perspective and duality. Are you ready to be a part of the next stage in human evolution? Call I Am Evolution today to schedule your appointment at 561-318-0006. That's 561-318-0006. Or email us at iamevolution@protonmail.com.
All right, everybody, we are back, and I'm glad you're joining us. Yeah, it's been a long day. I've been painting the driveway, all sorts of stuff, so it's been a long, very long day already. But the great news is that we no longer have to compare ourselves. If you're let down by your friendships, well, then that's because you're externally trying to get something from somebody. Your behavior, your motivation is extrinsic. It's not intrinsic. You have to change that to an intrinsic, because as long as you're trying to compare yourselves to the group, this group looks like this and I want to be like this in order to fit in, or I have to act this way. I have to be a complete sports nut and drink beer and do all this stuff in order for me to fit in. Well, then that reward system is always going to fail us, and that's the reason why we're failing in our relationships, our friendships, and the reason why our behavior patterns are repeating that. So if we start acting like the same, so our idea between this, our behaviors, is that if we start acting like somebody else, if we start behaving and we change our attitudes, which most of us do, especially in grade school and high school, right? We always start out so sweet, don't we? We always start out so nice, so sweet, and then all of a sudden, somewhere along the lines, we turn, right? Something changes in us, and we turn. And I did it even in high school. One year, I had enough with a lot of things that were going on in my life. I really rejected myself, and I changed everything about me. And I started hanging around with new people. I started and everybody was like shocked. And that's because my ideas, my ideas of what I was looking for at that time were because I was rejecting the intrinsic motivation, and I decided to switch to a particular idea. And we're going to get into this a little bit later with the theories and everything like that, but you have to remember that our behaviors and our attitude are based on, especially the leader of the group. Why do leaders of any groups and that seem so awing to us? It's because those behaviors and attitudes of predominant members of the group allow us to think that is status, that those people that are really good, that those people are likable, those people are lovable, and because everyone follows and does what they do, and that, well, then that what must mean that's what I'm looking for. So conformity, if we look at conformity, because we all are, every one of us has some conformity, and it's up to us to kind of unroll that, because our behaviors are tied into that. How many of you have been brought up in religion or spirituality where you think that you have to do stuff in order to appease a god or karma or whatever? That's conformity. How many of us are voting tonight that have to vote one or the other and not realize that there's probably 12 or 15 other people that you can vote for? But that's conformity. Why do we do the same things over and over? That's conformity. So conformity doesn't have to be the norm. We don't have to do these things to fit in. And matter of fact, the best thing in your life that you're going to be able to do when you want to truly feel like you want a sense of belonging is to be yourself. And I know that sounds so cliche, but it really truly is. It's when you are your true self, you have real friends, you have real people that want to be around you. Sure, all those groups fall away, all those people that you've been chasing, those toxic relationships, all those. And what's nice about this is this idea of the same goals come into place, because now your values are true. Now who you are and what you want are true. And those people might be few, and those ideas might be few, but they're solid. And that's what makes it amazing, because now you have the same interests, you have the same goals, the same socioeconomic statuses, the same belief systems, or kind of similar or something. And I don't mean belief systems as in religion or spirituality. I mean like I want friends that are honest and loyal and true to themselves, who aren't going to lie, stuff like that. That becomes a value. So I'm going to post up a little picture right here, and I don't know why it's not popping up. Okay, there we go. All right, so this is intrinsic motivation. So if you're looking at this thing, so in basic short, it's if you're participating in a sport that you find enjoyable because you want to do it. And I just said sports because this said sports and because that's the way we think here in America. But it's anything that you find enjoyable, like cleaning up your room, tidying up, solving a crossword puzzle. I do many things on my phone all the time, word puzzles and jigsaw puzzles, because intrinsically it doesn't give me anything externally. The more levels I'm on, it's not like, hey, look at me. I tease Caleb about that all the time, but in real life, it just, because it's satisfying to me, because I want to push myself. I want to see what I can do, how far I can do. That's intrinsic motivation. And like I said, studying for a subject that you find fascinating. I love what I do because it's intrinsically motivating for who I am. So, all right, let me see if I can take this off before we, let's see. All right. So that's the motivation behind everything and stuff like that. So now we're going to get into Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And the reason why I want to talk about this really quick is because of the things that it follows. At least I feel that Maslow's hierarchy of needs ties into what we're talking about. So Maslow was Abraham Maslow, who created this in 1943 by a paper called The Theory of Human Motivation. So this Maslow's hierarchy of needs wasn't created until after 1943, after a paper he wrote called The Theory of Human Motivation, where he focused and realized that belonging were major needs of people and pushes their behavior. So you have to understand that everything you do is driven by a behavior, whether it's intrinsically, extrinsically, or it's attachment or whatever it is. And that's one of the reasons why we discuss what we discuss all the time, is because these ideas have to be understood in order for you to evolve past them. If you want to get over these things, if you want to get over being a victim and that, you have to understand whether or not you're falling under one of these type of ideas. So basically, people are motivated by Maslow. People are motivated to fulfill basic needs before moving on to others, before moving on to other more advanced needs. So when we bring up the pyramid in a second, we'll talk about that. But basically, he said people have an inborn desire to be self-actualized, to be all that they can be. So there's this drive inside of us, and it really stems from our childhood, whether we're nurtured, whether we're not nurtured, whether we're abused, whether we're thought of, whether we're the first, middle, second, last child. Depending on how our things are, we have this self-actualization to be all that we can. It's our human nature. It's that fire. It's that passion. And even with me, I am a very passionate person. Sometimes it comes out and fiery ways where I get a little, my mouth goes a little off, or sometimes I'm a little too excitable, but that's that passion inside. And to achieve these goals, you have to have the basic needs must be met. So that means the reason why we're stuck repeating the same cycles is because our basic needs haven't been met. So if you're struggling with money and you can't buy food, or you don't feel safe in the neighborhood, or you're just not feeling, you have this feeling of safety, whoever you're with, or if you're living conditions. But if those safety needs, foods, if you're not loved, if your self-esteem is low, these are basic needs that have to be met. So let me bring up Maslow's, there's Maslow's, and we'll bring up that. So these are Maslow's five levels. So the first one is physiological, which are the basic needs. The second one is safety. The third one is love and belonging. And the fourth one is esteem. And the fifth one is self-actualization, which is the most complex. So I want to run through these really quick because I want to get to attachment theory and everything like that. And we can have another show on this if you guys want. But basically, with physiological needs, you have breathing, food, water. Well, of course, we need to breathe, right? We don't breathe, we don't live. And sex, sleep, homeostasis. And we have to have that. Our body is always looking to be homeostatic. And sleep, if we're not getting enough sleep, food, water, if we can't pay our bills, all these things have to be met before we jump up to the next one. And the next one is safety. once our basic needs, and safety really falls under the basic needs. In my personal opinion, the first two are the most basic human needs. And so safety, you have to feel secure, right? So we have to have security of our body. If we don't like the way we look, then that affects our basic way of thinking and our whether or not we can evolve through this pyramid. And so employment, as I said, we have to be able to pay our bills, resources, mortality. How many of us, when we start getting older, we start thinking about death all the time? Well, guess what? That brings us back down to this idea of attachment theory and down the level according to Maslow. Family, health, properties, all this stuff. The third one is love, belonging. So friendships. This is once we start establishing, if we want healthy friends according to this theory, then yes, we have to have the physiological and the safety handled and secure before we build. Think of it like we're building a house. We're trying to build a house. Whatever the foundation is, that's what your house is going to be in. So if you think about the story like the three little pigs, right? The first one's built out of straw or whatever, or hay or whatever, or I don't even remember, twigs, something like that, and it gets blown down. The other one's made out of some wood, and that gets blown down, but it's cheap wood. The other one builds it out of bricks, right? Because it's strong, because the one is educated, secure, knows what he wants and everything, and builds a solid house based on his education. This is the same idea. So if you want friends and family and sexual intimacy, or intimacy at all, I even say intimacy. Intimacy doesn't have to be sexualized. It can be a hug. It can be caring for someone. It could be two friends hanging out fishing all day long and just having a great day without anything. So if you want these things, you have to start building these things. And of course, once that starts happening, our esteem, our self-esteem starts to build, because our need for appreciation isn't so valued based on our friendship. And what I mean by that is, most of us, because our pyramid is all wonky, that we're chasing our self-esteem by if we're valued, if we get friends, relationships. And that's why this hierarchy is, and at least in my opinion, I agree with it. I know there's some controversial, and some psychologists and some people have an issue with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but in my thought, I agree with it, because I can understand where he's thinking as far as this. And absolutely, so our self-esteem, our confidence, our will to achieve, not for the sake of pleasing others, but for us to achieve our goals and our intrinsic motivation goals. That's the true self. And of course, respect. When these things start to build, you respect yourself. You don't need respect from somebody else. If someone doesn't want to give it to you, because people can't give you what they don't know what it is. And I know a lot of you, I'm big on respect, and I demand respect, but at the same time, I understand if someone has no clue what respect is and they're just running their mouth and doing whatever, why should I expect it from them? I can't. But when I know someone understands it, absolutely, because this is where self-esteem and self-actualized is the top of the pyramid. This is where you finally have the power, where you're strong and confident, and you know what you want, because your morality is not based on what society tells you is right or wrong or good or bad. It's what you know to be true in your heart. And that explodes your creativity, your spontaneity, your problem solving. You become less prejudiced. You become less racist. You don't want to make fun of people anymore. And that's not meaning teasing people. I love to tease my friends, but I'm talking about real, true, making fun of people to be mean and nasty and all that stuff. And acceptance. And that's the greatest part. Acceptance of the facts of truth of life, no longer hiding in lies and being a victim, but accepting the fact of who you are and where you're at and everything. And that's why this is such a blessing, because when you're self-actualized, you have this power that you just want to be, and nothing's going to shake it, because a pyramid is a very strong, because by geometric shape, pyramids, a triangle is the strongest shape possible, and besides a circle, then that's a spiritual thing. We'll get into that in another show. But you have that power. You're indestructible, and that's such a great feeling. So you have to start at the bottom. Your needs have to be met, people. If you have behaviors that you want to change, then ask yourself, what is the behavior that I'm really looking for? Is it intrinsic? Is it extrinsic? Because if it's extrinsic and I'm chasing physiological and I'm chasing safety because these needs are met, because especially now with COVID, a lot of people are out of work, and then there's the elections. All these people are trying to build their pyramids out of nothing, out of things that are out of broken material. And we have to learn to be able to undo this. And so as we progress up, these needs must be met. These ideas of social and friendship change. Your love and intimacy change. That's why when people say, Miss Raina, how can you not date someone or want to date someone or be happy not being in a relationship? I was like, because I'm self-actualized. I know who I am. I love myself. My value doesn't base on how many friends I have, who I have around me. Hey, if the whole world wants to think I'm full of crap and not like me and stuff and don't like what I do or what I say, that's okay, because I know who I am, and it's taken me a long time to get here, and it feels great, and ain't nobody's gonna destroy my period, or pyramid, not period, and that's the great thing about that, is because when that pyramid's strong, man, you can change the world by yourself. So let me take this down really quick. It'd be nice to have someone doing this for me, But your needs versus intrinsic. Most of our needs come from deficiency. Deficiency of one of those, whether it's physiological, security, social. Remember that every time you chase something, every one of your behaviors, most of them come from a deficiency. I almost want to say 99.9 of them come from deficiency needs, where you have to try to chase these things, where you have to be able to do this. Because if these growth needs that they're looking at, if you want needs that come from growth, well, then those are at the highest level of these pyramids. They don't stem from the lack of something. They have a desire to grow because it nurtures themselves. Just like a plant, think of it this way. A tree doesn't grow to impress another tree, right? A tree grows because of the nutrients it's got, the water it takes, and it works with the system that it's around. And that's what self-actualization, that's what changing your behaviors are. So let's get into extrinsic, because I know we got a few minutes and I really want to get into, I know I've kind of talked about it, but so let's do this. So let's go with the extrinsic. So extrinsic motivations are this. So as I said, it's all external factors. It's participating in a sport. Why? Because you want to win a war. You want to show the trophy and show that you're the greatest thing since sliced bread. Every time you go up to the plate, you want to hit a home run, to wave your chest, to get your chest big, or shoot that basket, or to do something, or to make millions of dollars, to say, hey, look what kind of car I'm driving. I'm the greatest thing. Hey, and this is all ego. And that, so we avoid like things like, as I said, like with the other one, it said clean the room because you enjoy it. Well, this one, you clean the room because your parents reprimand you. You don't want to clean your room. You don't want to do it. You don't want to work on yourself. You're only doing it because someone's telling you have to. Well, we can't advance. We can't grow if we're not doing it because someone's reprimanding you all the time. Competing in contests to win scholarships, and we're only studying and doing things because we're going to get a good grades. How many of us have been told that you got to study, you got to get good grades because you got to go to college? That's all extrinsic motivation. And if you and that eventually fizzles out. And the most common extrinsic motivations are money, praise, competitions, treatment, how we're treated with punishment, whether we get grounded, whether we get in trouble, loss of a job, loss of a relationship. Those are who are with people because they hate to be alone. That's all extrinsic motivation, because we hate to be alone. We don't want to. We hate this job, but we're afraid to go out and look for another job, so we stick with it. That's all extrinsic motivation. And to me, I know there's some psychologists and some people, that think that extrinsic motivation is really helpful to people, but in my personal opinion, I don't see it, because it's all external validation. And in my personal opinion, and as far as who I am and the work that I do, external validation doesn't last. It may make you feel good for momentary value, but then you chase. Think of it this way. Think of it like you do drugs, right? People who do drugs, especially like cocaine or heroin or anything, what do? Or smoking crack, they do something and they get that high, right? They get that rush. Well, this is the same thing with extrinsic motivation when it comes to you win an award or anything. At first, it feels great, man. You're like, wow, this feels great. But then after the second time, it's not as good. And the third time, it's not. And you keep chasing these extrinsic motivations to get recognized. Bonuses, recognition, awards, trips, trophies. You got to keep collecting to feel that rush. And this is the reason why, in my opinion, extrinsic motivation is tough. So, all right, guys, we'll be right back after these messages from I Am Evolution.
The human experience is changing, and consciousness is evolving into something higher than any of us could ever imagine. As we transform into more sentient beings, a new world of connected consciousness is taking place. Welcome to I Am Evolution, the movement in human development that transforms the human experience into a deeper consciousness through perspective and duality. Are you ready to be a part of the next stage in human evolution? Call I Am Evolution today to schedule your appointment at 561-318-0006. That's 561-318-0006. Or email us at iamevolution@protonmail.com.
All right, everybody, we are back for the last half. I thank you for joining us, and we are going to get into attachment theory now, because I love this theory. And this theory is so much fun, and Caleb and I were watching a couple of videos on it just to brush up on some stuff, because you can't remember everything in the world. But I love this theory, and ever since I learned it a long time ago, it is so spot on with a lot of things. And attachment is basically a connection between two things. So when we look at attachment theory, the idea of it is the attachment between either a character. Most of the time we look at it, it starts in our youth. It's our attachment between our caregiver and a child. And that doesn't mean a nanny. I mean your mom or your dad, your parents, aunts and uncle, whoever raised you. And basically all right, hold on one second. Extrinsic. All right, let's take that off. Okay, that is off. Thank you, Caleb. So, all right. So, and basically the function of this is to ensure that the safety of the baby from the moment it's born. That's what attachment theory is all about. So it's a connection between a caregiver and a child, and the function of attachment, that's the reason why they tell you to hold the baby right away after birth, is to ensure the safety, an emotional safety of the child. And about around 6 months of age, when the baby is attached to a person, when it's healthy, when we're about 6 months, a baby is attached to the caregiver, and the person is most often, and a lot of times, they fear the strangers. So what ends up happening is we look for, we want the security, we want the sense of security, we want to explore the world when we're healthily attached to things, when we have a secure attachment, and we've been loved. We have this security. What ends up happening is we end up going out in the world. We want to go out in the world. We have this sense of security. We want to explore the world. We know that we always have this safety net. We know we can go back to mom and dad to protect us if everything goes wrong, if we try to go out on our own. And all of a sudden all of a sudden we have a safety net, our safe home we can go back to. And this is an important role in psychological development, because you have to remember that how we are raised, our first moments through our first several years, is how we're developed. So that first 6 years is of how we're raised by our parents, whether our parents are loving, caring, open, accepting, they hug us, they don't hug us, however they treat us is how we're going to develop. And so the impact of this is how fearful and dependent we become in our adulthood. So, or especially from probably about 8 years on to our teenage years all the way into adulthood. So the more we attach ourselves, the more we attach ourselves to ideas, and the more we attach ourselves to toxic relationships, most likely we look back in our childhood and there's some detachment of level of love and acceptance and security there. And we'll get into that in a second. But this impacts how we emotionally connect to relationships. And I don't mean just romantic. I'm talking about our friends, our family, our work. Everything is a relationship. And you have to understand that. So if we're looking and we're always finding the toxic jobs, or we're finding the toxic relationships, or friends are letting us down, well, then behind the theory of this and how we understand each other is how our emotional attachments are towards our childhood. And that's why I have always said for many years that our childhood is the foundation for all of our adulthood problems, because it all depends on how we were loved and how we were received and how we perceive ourselves ever since childhood. So the 4 types of attachment theory are secure, anxious ambivalent, anxious avoidant, and disorganized. So if we are secure, as I said, they trust. This is usually done because the caregiver, our parents, loved us. They made sure that they supported us in everything that they could do. They were open with us. They hugged us. They kissed us. They were really there for us. And so the development of who we are and the security feeling of where we're at allowed us to feel safe, allowed us to feel accepted and loved and valued as a child, and we brought that forth into our teenage years and our adult years. And this is very active, and we become active in our interactions. We're not afraid to talk to people. We don't have a recluse type of personality. We're not afraid. We don't have anxiety or fears. And we have an emotional harmony with all the relationships that we have. This is important. And in adulthood, when you're secure, that means that you see relationships as equals. That means men, if you see a woman as equal, then you have this secure type personality, and that's what it is. You see your friends as equal. You don't compete with your friends. You're not better or less than your relationships, women, men. You don't see things as unequal and trying to gain the upper hand. Everything is on an even playing field, and you want to build healthy relationships, and you don't fear abandonment or losing things. So if you lose a job, you say, okay, great, I'll find another one. If someone doesn't like you and doesn't want to be with you anymore, well then, okay, great, see you later, bye, because you don't fear abandonment, because you're secure inside. And you like honesty, you're supportive, you're independent, you love these type of ideas, because that is what the idea of what you've become, or what you've been trained is now what you've become. And so you're not afraid to be alone. You're not afraid this. And the secure type of attachment is the rarest, because not many people, I know there's a lot of people out there that'll say that they don't care, but you can always see by what they post on their social media, by what they say, how they interact with their friends. There's very few secure attachment type of people. The next is is tied for second, or tied for first with the top 2, and this is anxious ambivalent. And most of you are anxious ambivalent, and this is the reason why, is because we fear loss of connection. We are afraid to get our hearts broken. We're afraid to lose the job. We're afraid that people are going to abandon us. We're afraid that people are going to hurt us. We're so desperate for love and affection that we're willing to be with anybody and have any friends, and we're willing to give excuses for the way our friends act and how they treat us. And we want others to complete them. We're with people because we don't like being alone. And we give excuses for those people who constantly lie to us, constantly treat us bad, constantly do things to us, and that we give excuses for them because we're so afraid. We're constantly insecure. We second guess everything. We need constant approval by everyone around us. Did I do this right? Well, how about this? Check my work. Do this, do that, and that. They constantly need approval from everybody else. They can't make decisions because of this idea. And this is horrible way of living. They attach themselves to relationships, and when we're an adult and you're anxious, ambivalent, which you fear that the person doesn't love you, and so you become smothering. You want to do everything with them. You have to go with them. For every time they text someone on the phone, are they cheating on me? What's going on? And you become so overbearing with your friends, work, and relationships that you often push them away. Have anyone ever told you that you're too much sometimes, or you're just too, like, they're like, you're just too much sometimes. You just you gotta let go. And that's because you're anxious, ambivalent, you're fearful. Your whole life revolves around fear. Your interactions are hard. Others have to act the way you want them to. You want them to be a certain way. And if you want them to expect, like, if I do something, well, why didn't they do this? I'm this way. And so if my behavior is that way, well, if I'm this way and they're not doing that, that means they don't love me. That means they're not my friends. They're not doing this. Anxious, ambivalent people, you need to relax. It is hard. I get it, because at childhood, most likely you had people that were very hard for you, or sometimes very distancing. Maybe your parents didn't hug you a lot and support you a lot, but this is the reason why you're so overwhelming. This is the reason why you live in fear, is because of these ideas. You have to heal your childhood. You have to understand that your love from your parents and everything else, yes, we're always seeking that validation, but we're not going to get that validation. We have to start moving and working on these things, because you're so emotionally dependent on everybody, and you're so desperate for love that you want everybody else to complete you. And so your fear leads to being very clingy, demanding, jealous, upset. It's very, very hard. The next one, before we get to this, I know we got a few minutes. I know I'm going a little fast because I want to get these last two down. But the next one is tied for first with the last one, and this this one even I was for a very long time, and this is anxious avoidant, and basically you're uncomfortable with deep connection. As a child, you've accepted that you can't rely on your caregivers. My parents were very businesslike. I knew that they loved me, but the way we dealt with things was tough love and money. Here's money, instead of things being said, oh, I love you, I'm sorry for this, hey, here's $20, go buy something. That was their way of doing it. Doesn't mean I know that they didn't love me. They did a lot for me, but the connection, the touching, the feeling, and plus being adopted that first year, my biological mom never touched me. And so I knew from a very young age that the people that were raising me and the people that weren't emotionally available for me. So now, as an adult, or for many years, touching and hugging and being close and speaking, like, I speak honestly, but back in the day, I would never tell someone how I felt because it pained me. And so with anxious avoidant, you're pained, you're afraid of this. It makes you feel really uncomfortable. You don't want to express how you feel. You don't want to express and understand your emotions, because intimacy makes you go, and the thought of sex and different things, oh, it is horrible. It's just, those people that just, that they care but can never express themselves, that always got to make the smart comment, that always have to say something quick and funny when things get too intimate. That's anxious avoidant, because they do not want to deal with anything emotional. They keep their distance. They reject intimacy. They shut down. They literally shut down when someone gets too deep or when someone gets too close to them, and often push them away. They find ways to push them away and keep them at arm's length, because if I have a friend that's arm's length, I can love them at my safety, at my distance. But if they get too close to me, well, then are they going to let me down again? What are they going to do? Because my whole life, my childhood, I was taught that people can't love me. People don't want to love me. I'm not good enough for that. And so people in ancient avoidance struggle with relationships. They feel the lack of closeness. They push back. They often sabotage their own relationships, and they want to keep. And they'll come back and apologize because they want to keep you, because they don't mean to do it. It's never malevolent. They don't mean to do it, but their safety is most important. And so they invest a lot of time. And this is why a lot of times and this is why these two are so closely tied in. And most people are a cross between these two. A lot of times, you ever get those relationships where both people invest so much time in the beginning, and then all of a sudden, as it starts getting longer, all of a sudden everything falls apart? Well, that's because of this. Because anxious avoidance people invest a lot of time in the beginning of relationships to secure that relationship. And then when it gets too close, they start pushing it away because they fear that intimacy. The last one, because I know we got 3 minutes left, is disorganized attachments. And this is a mixture between anxious and avoidant. But this is on a deeper level. This is very unpredictable. This is a deeper level of self-sabotage, sometimes even violent. And like, these people have usually experienced in childhood physical abuse to a very traumatic level. Maybe a sexual abuse, maybe physical abuse, maybe they were just totally, completely ignored. Maybe their parents were drug addicts or something. and they realize that and their thoughts, their ideas, everything about them is just so disorganized. And so they suffered abuse, or it suffers from neglect. And as childs, they see caregivers, they see their parents as a source, as disorganized, as harmful, as hurting. And so any idea of commitment, they associate that. And these people can be explosive. These people can enjoy breaking things. These people, if you ever known someone that's abusive, you've been in a relationship and they just want to tear you down about everything, never want to push you up. These people are the disorganized attachments, because they have a hard time getting along with everybody. It's everybody else's fault. They micromanage their emotions. They manipulate things because they don't want to lose control. This is very hard. And in adulthood, they have a hard time, even though they try to micromanage things, they have a hard time managing their emotions because they start to lose control. And then it becomes an unwinding, chaotic mess. And that's usually when the frustration and the rage comes out. That's usually because they have a hard time expressing who it is, and then it just pops like a cork and it just explodes. And they reject anything and everything. They reject all help. They reject all love. They reject everything because their idea of love and intimacy, and that comes from the idea of abuse and neglect. And so these type of people are very chaotic and sensitive a lot of times. They're explosive, as I said, and they don't trust anybody. These type of people have the hardest job, and this is actually a very low percentage as well. But these type of people have to, I really suggest, seek therapy and start to work through their issues, because they self-sabotage everything, and often turn to drugs and alcohol and things like that, and often live a lone life or in a very abusive relationship, not because they want to, but just because that's what they're repeating. And these behaviors of what they're doing is just taught from childhood. So, all right, guys, I think that's it. Ooh, I'm out of breath. My throat is all scratchy. I am done. But I got everything in, and that's surprising, because I usually don't. But I wanted to make sure I got everything in. Next week, we're going to have a guest from Equality, Florida, Dee Palazzo, and I'm so excited about that. And so if you guys make sure you tune in for that, because she's an amazing activist here in Florida, and I met her recently, and just a wonderful, wonderful lady. So please make sure you tune into that. But as always, guys, let me get my trusty thing out here. And all right, guys, so follow us on our Facebook at facebook.com/Transcendental Transformation. Our YouTube is Transcendental Transformation Radio Show. Sign up on my website, soulandspiritguide.com, and sign up for the newsletter to receive special hidden shows, VIP access to the website and everything. And email me, of course, as always, guys. And like I said before, if you guys enjoyed tonight's show and you can think of anybody that can be that can use this show or maybe understand them to help. Our job and our goal is to help and reach as many people as possible. But it takes you guys sharing the information, sharing the shows, and that for them to be able to reach it. So, all right, guys, as always, remember to believe in yourself, and it's not our abilities or our talents that make us who we are, but it is our choices. Thank you, and have a wonderful evening.